Stephanie Webster started her career as a photography editor and digital strategist in the New York advertising world. She launched CT Bytes in 2009. It was a culmination of her experience with creative content, branding, and art direction. She's published many Connecticut dining guides, the Fairfield County Chef's Table Book, and the CT Bytes Hot Dish podcast.
Indeed.
Stephanie is an advocate for the restaurant industry and founded Food for Behind the Lines, a philanthropic organization that feeds and supports unemployed restaurant workers. Welcome, Stephanie, to 06880, the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
I'm hungry to hear what you have to say.
Pun intended.
So first, let me say how cool it is that the founder of the best food blog in Connecticut has Westport roots.
Indeed.
We like to think we have a great dining scene, and that sort of validates it that,
Yeah.
you know, the doyen of food in Westport, in Connecticut, is a Westporter. Before we begin, the main dish, here's a little entree. Sorry, that's the last I'll do of that.
Keep it coming. Keep it coming.
What's the backstory behind CT Bytes?
Backstory. So I was born and raised in Manhattan with a family that just always loved to eat. We schlepped down to Chinatown every Sunday and eat uni and 1,000-year-old eggs and all sorts of things I couldn't actually decipher or, know what I was eating, but it was always an experience. So I have that in my blood, lots of travel. Always loved an adventure in dining. And I ended up as a photo editor right at the cusp of when the interweb was coming into fruition.
Interwebs.
The interwebs, yes, the interwebs were dawning. And I actually worked for a Reader's Digest special publication and ended up bringing Reader's Digest online, AOL back in the day. And then from there, ended up as a digital strategist, doing a lot of user interface. I can actually do some HTML coding.
Wow.
Little known fact. And strategy stuff mostly. So I did the first Toys R Us website. It was very exciting, all that kind of stuff. So that's my background. And I've always loved photography. I've been in a darkroom since I was 10, probably. So grew up in Manhattan. I went to Seattle for about 8 years, where the food scene was insane. It was crazy. It was when all the pop-ups were starting and underground dining and the proximity to farms and, vineyards and everything was happening in Seattle.
Great seafood.
Oh, God, great seafood, great everything. And we were involved in some really interesting underground dining experiences that just blew me away and got me completely hooked. So when we came back here, moved back here because, family and whatnot, came to Westport. And, after a couple years, and I had 3 kids at this point, they were young, I was ready to get back into the workforce. I'd taken a little bit of a hiatus to raise some children. So I just started looking for good food. Here I am, I'm used to finding great spots. There really wasn't anything out there. There wasn't a great resource for sort of just interesting dining in the state of Connecticut. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna start building my own. And we wandered around, I grabbed some friends, we took pictures, I started a blog. My background in branding certainly helped the blog look a little less bloggy, right? So it looked like more of a business. There was a little bit of a double entendre with CT Bytes. I wasn't super happy to come to the suburbs of Connecticut, to be honest. I love it now. Wasn't, 15 years ago.
No, it's a great name. A great name.
So I was like, I don't know, it could really suck here. It could be really great, not sure. So it became CT Bytes. And then we just started exploring, and truly, I can't believe what happened with CT Bytes, like where it was a slow burn. It took a couple years of just sort of slogging it out, but it was done with
It simmered.
love. It simmered for a couple of years, yes. And it was sort of the perfect way to do it, to be honest. Didn't set out to make money. It wasn't really a business. It wasn't intentional like that in the beginning. It was just clean, pure editorial content. I didn't want to muddy it up with advertising. I wanted to support the industry. It was always created with the intention of supporting and being positive and a curated site. So, when you've got 80,000 readers, you say something bad about a restaurant, you can destroy it.
Yeah.
So we realized very early on, and that wasn't what I wanted to be. I didn't want to be a Yelp review site, with people jumping aboard. And I think the industry understood that, and that's part of the reason we've gotten along so well. to be a leader in the culinary industry, you have to have relationships, good relationships with the chefs and the restaurant owners. So I think the fact that we were always supportive was nice from the beginning and helped us build relationships. So that is sort of how we got started. And then we did the podcast. We've done a couple books. We did a book in the middle of the pandemic to raise money for the restaurant industry. And it's just been growing and growing and growing. Obviously, now we have advertising. We're on multiple social media platforms. We're involved in we're media sponsors for all sorts of events. And we like to get involved. We like to get our fingers into everything, which is fun.
Of all the stories you've done,
Yes.
any stand out?
It's like really big stories. I mean, we tend to like the stories we love. There's certainly some very newsworthy stories that blow up and they go viral. For instance, the fact that Emmy Squared, this pizza place from Brooklyn, is coming to Westport, that got a lot of play. So there's stories like that just do well. And we like the pieces where we go into a small place, you don't really know what you're expecting, and there's this just great story behind it. It's like somebody who's immigrated from somewhere in Latin America. They've got their whole family in the kitchen, and it's those kinds of stories that really kind of get you and keep you going. It's the people. It's the people in the business that make us do what we do, essentially.
Typical week? Is there such a thing?
Sort of. So there are obviously a lot of events. We get invited to all sorts of, restaurant openings and food festivals and wine tastings, and so there's that sort of flurry of events that we do in the background. I'm like an early morning riser. I'm up at 5:30 with the sunrise, and I just start going. I'm on social media immediately. Obviously, we like to launch stuff in the morning, doing video reels, reaching out to restaurants to schedule shoots. What else? It's a lot of like meeting with people in the industry, and whether it's an advertiser or some restaurant that's just opening and wants you to swing by and check it out. You know that part.
Sure.
So mostly I'm bopping from place to place to check, a brewery here, and then I'm going to this restaurant, and then I'm up in Hartford going to a food truck festival. We're all over the place, but that keeps it fun, right?
How do you stay so slim?
So I really like exercising, fortunately. I do some ballroom dance, do some other stuff. I dance with a really great guy named Billy Blanks. I don't know if you know him. He's a local Connecticut favorite. Wow. So I do a lot of that kind of stuff. And honestly, to eat the amount of food that I need to consume on a weekly basis, I really need to, you need to do that.
Well, it works.
And I don't like to say no to food. Like if you're going to serve me something, I'm going to eat it.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be like, no, I can't eat that, I'm on a diet. Like that
Right.
doesn't happen in my life. We're eating everything.
So how do you decide what you're going to cover? You only have 3 or 4
Yes.
main stories a week.
So there are the pieces that are simply newsworthy, right? It's an opening, it's exciting. There's maybe a chef that you know about from other venues. So there's some buzz around that. We go after pieces that again, we're curated. So it's always going to be a restaurant that we felt good about. We'd been there before. We come back for a second time, maybe a third time, and we decide to write the article. Again, it's very chef-driven, so we focus on chefs we think are doing a great job. They're involved in the community. They're an asset to whatever location they are working in. And we cover everything. We do farmers markets. We'll do breweries. We'll do anything that is culinary-based. So usually those 4 stories are more timely, right? We don't tend to go back to a restaurant that opened 10 years ago unless they've done something incredible or different, that's worth going back for. So essentially, those are the most newsworthy topics, I would say. And I have a team of about 10 or 12 writers, and, they're all over the state of Connecticut. So we try to get there early and quick, and we like to give the restaurants a couple of weeks to get their feet under them because, it takes a while, and we don't want to start reviewing a restaurant on day one. So, but essentially after those couple of weeks are up, we're in there. We're usually in there. Often not. Sometimes we go in quietly if we don't know a chef because we don't want to, you go and you tell them who you are, and then you don't actually love the meal, and then you don't write it up, and then you got a problem.
Yeah.
So we do it quietly sometimes. We go in and tell them, and that's sort of how we roll.
And then you've got your features. You've got best Easter brunch, best Passover catering, best cookies.
Well, everyone likes a list. Everyone lists the list.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. That's very digestible. And it's also, it serves as a guide. You know, I will say, and this is off the tangent, slightly off topic, but I've been in restaurants where people have taken out their phones while they're ordering and pulled up one of our articles to see what we ate. So it's the same. The guides are great. You know, for someone who is new to the area, they don't know where to find, like waterfront dining went up today. It's a great guide. And we actually can, you know, sell a couple of sort of these premium spots, which is great. And it's just a valuable resource for anyone around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we think so.
So let's dig in.
Yes, let us dig in.
The dining scene in Connecticut.
Yes.
Can you characterize it generally? Do we have a dining
Well, it's
scene?
changed. God, it's changed so much. When I rolled in here 15 years ago, the dining scene was pretty small. I mean, there weren't a lot of big restaurants. It was limited. You know, you really had to dig a little deeper to find sort of the gems, right? There were, you know, a couple of the granddaddies like Matt Storch and then Bill Tavey rolled in. I mean, there certainly were people out there, but it has exploded in the last 12 years. And we like to pat ourselves on the back and say we helped it get here. Who knows? But I think with everyone moving out, so many people moving out from New York City, metropolitan areas, we are now flooded. We're inundated with really great chefs and great spots. So we definitely have a scene out here. And just the fact that a bunch of the New York City spots are now coming out here, the fact that you had Van Leeuwen and we're getting Tacombe, which is amazing, from Nolita in the city, and Emmy Squared. I mean, there's some big spots coming out from New York. So restaurant owners are taking a chance on this community, especially in Fairfield County, but also up in West Hartford. So I would say we do have a scene out here, and it just keeps growing. I feel like we are like 50% of the way there, but it's just going to keep.
And how do you characterize the scene? I mean, you know, is it ethnic? Is it what?
I mean, it's really a little of everything. It's based on the neighborhood, right? So if you go up into Bridgeport, you can find literally every ethnicity of, you know, every cuisine you can possibly imagine, and that's incredible. You got to dig a little deeper there. If you're in Westport, same thing. I mean, it's less down and dirty. It's more white tablecloth, but you're still going to find Mexican and Japanese and Korean, and you know, it is definitely a mixed bag. I think we're definitely getting a little bit of everything. The one cuisine we don't seem to have a ton of is Korean barbecue for some reason. I don't know why. We have tons of Thai. We have Vietnamese. I don't know. I don't know why that hasn't expanded. Simply may not be that community is not here.
I was going to say
it's just not here.
Right.
Yeah. So we're missing that. But other than that, I mean, the state has most cuisines pretty well covered. And if you can't find it in Fairfield County, you can find it in Hartford and New Haven. Obviously, the seafood scene is huge here, right? We got pizza. We do pizza right everywhere. And we have an awful lot of lobster rolls. So that's well covered here, and that defines us, right, our area. But other than that, I think you can find almost anything. You can go to CT Bites if you're looking for it.
Right. And where is Westport positioned in relation to the county and the state?
Westport is sort of the creme de la creme for dining, to be honest, in Connecticut, and I say that without bias. It really
Seriously?
is. Oh, it really is. Part of that is you had a couple of really, really excellent chefs who launched their careers here, right? So Brian Lewis with Oko and The Cottage, and Bill Tavey, you know, he has multiple restaurants here. So and Matt Storch is now here. There's some really great chefs.
Michelle Nishan.
Nishan, of course. The fact that Ali and Eatery over there, she's a great chef. There's people like to be in Westport, and part of that, I have to say, is probably due to Lori Cochran, who runs the Westport Farmers Market. That's a big deal. I mean, that's the best farmers market in the entire state, and the way she runs it is so pristine, and like she really cares. It is a beautiful market. She's very strict about sustainability, and you know, it has to be really hyper local, and she curates it really nicely, and the chefs are sourcing from that market. So I think there's a sort of a vibe here. Certainly Michelle Nishan had that history in Westport, was a big deal, and Paul Newman, the whole vibe. But so I think Westport is really one of the big foodie towns. Like, you hear about chefs, they all want to open something here. Huh. But there's also a lot of competition. So it's that like, well, and the real estate's expensive. But yeah, Westport's hot.
But it's interesting right here outside the library. You know, you've got Basso, you've got Don Memo, you've got Capulli, you've got Giratai, you've got,
Yeah.
and several others. And I asked about that once, and somebody said, it's good because the concentration means that,
Yes.
there's energy and there's,
Yes, no, 100%.
brings
People
people-
love that. I mean, they like that. And if a diner can't get into Walrus Alley or Don Memo, they'll go next door to the restaurant nearby. So restaurants like having other restaurants nearby. You'd think there'd be
Saugatuck, too, down-
competition. Oh, yeah. Yep, you can see people roaming around from place to place all around Saugatuck. And people like to eat out in Westport. Like, those restaurants are packed. I mean, maybe not on a Tuesday or Wednesday, but Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they are packed. I think at the end of the day, nobody really likes to cook. Actually, I think we just like to eat out.
Right.
So I do think it is, a chef will tell you, it's better for them to be, versus being isolated just by themselves as a destination, to be in a community. Plus, they support each other. Chefs, they do all these late night happy hours, industry nights, and the chefs come out. They come out after service at like 11 o'clock at night, they go out, which is great, and that's fun, and it helps them collaborate. They can share ideas. They can share, if they're getting like Sport Hill Farm will do a run of produce from her farm. She can deliver it to multiple restaurants because they're all right near each
Yeah.
other versus, schlepping around from town to town. So it's a benefit to have them close by.
Where do they go out at night around here? Because there's no places open.
Slim pickings around here. They really have to go to Norwalk. But there's some really nice industry nights in Norwalk. And you're seeing more and more of that, I think. And I also think there's an influx of New Yorkers that have come to Westport. So I'm hoping that there's a slightly younger crowd here and that some of these places will be open later because it's fun. I mean, people go to a show, they want to do something afterwards. And it's a little bit of a sleepy town in Westport for that.
And this is before your time, but when I was growing up here, there were a ton of late night,
were.
bars and places to go.
And they got shut down.
And that ended.
Yeah. And
The movie theater's moving out.
that
Heard
was
it.
huge. That was a big deal. I mean, we would kill to have a movie theater in town.
Yeah.
That would be great. And honestly, that dictates some of the late night. You don't have kids hanging out if there's no movie theater, right?
Sure.
And we also lost our froyo places. It's terrible, just terrible.
Oh, we have our nail salons.
A lot of those.
Trends. What are some trends in the industry?
So I would say, obviously, the pandemic was a big deal for the culinary industry, and I think it changed the way people functioned globally, obviously. I think just there are more food trucks, there's more ghost kitchens, where people don't necessarily have to have paying, retail for, for the real estate. I think supply chain issues have forced restaurants to think more sustainably. I think that there are chefs that have their own gardens and farms, and they're bringing stuff in. Ingredients have got very expensive, needless to say. So it's not easy to run a restaurant right now. What else? I think that there's definitely a trend towards plant-based food. I think you'll see more and more of that going on, which is, again, great for the environment and super sustainable. And I do think there are also a lot of collabs and pop-ups, and people are, I think the pandemic brought people together as a community, certainly the restaurant industry, and there's a lot of support for one another and people who are interested in doing, cool collaborations together. So if you follow CT Bites or you sort of follow the industry here, you'll see tons of those, and that's a blast. But, it's tricky. The pandemic made it tricky, and the labor shortages, I think, have been hard for them. So technology will play more of a role. You see all the QR codes, people trying to sort of skinny back the level of service and fine dining. So you're not, because people are so short-staffed.
Yeah.
They're trying to do it with less front-of-the-house staff. So, but I think it's all good. I think we're, trending in an interesting direction. Also, food halls. I know there's one opening up that I can't discuss yet, but I think the food hall thing, food courts, definitely good.
But this is not your mall food court. This is not Panda Express.
No. These are like the high-end James Beard food hall that's about to open up in the city, and the Bourdain sort of inspired one in the city called Urban Hawker. So there's some cool stuff going on that allows young chefs to get involved in the industry without having to pay the real estate costs for having their own space, which is fun.
Awesome.
More
Who
fun
knew?
for us. Yeah.
Food for behind the lines.
Yes, that was born out of the pandemic. Obviously, our job as restaurant reviewers sort of went by the wayside during the pandemic as everyone shut their doors. So we tried to support them in any way we possibly could, whether it was publishing guides, people who were doing, takeout and, all the special sort of like to-go dining that people were doing to try to stay in business. But one of the things we realized early on is that this industry was really struggling, and people were out of work and they couldn't feed themselves. I mean, and not everybody was, like on the books and eligible for packages and all the, the government payout stuff. So we tried to support those folks, and we created a book, basically. Well, Food for Behind the Lines, we just rounded up restaurants, and we had them just do tons and tons of, donations for hospitals and nurses. And that was early on in the pandemic where the hospitals and nurses were struggling, the healthcare industry. So the restaurants essentially donated all those. And then we migrated it, I'm getting ahead of myself, and pivoted to supporting the industry itself. So it started with the healthcare workers, and then we started feeding the industry, and we created basically like boxes of food, raw ingredients that we would deliver to restaurant workers. The healthcare workers got packaged meals and all kinds of stuff. And we raised money, so we were paying the restaurants to make those food deliveries for the hospitals. So it helped two industries. It was helping the healthcare workers. It was also helping the restaurants stay in business because we were funding it. And it was all donations. We did get a grant towards the end. That was significant. But essentially it was donations. And we raised like $200,000 to feed those folks. So it was... Wow. It kept us busy.
Yeah.
And felt like you were doing something, in a time that was so, you felt sort of helpless,
sure.
Right, to help these people. So it was, yeah. Hopefully we won't have to do it again, but it was great.
Yeah, that's
great while it lasted.
Fantastic. So a couple of quick questions now.
Yeah.
Best meal you've ever eaten?
So the best meal I've ever eaten was at a restaurant in San Sebastian, Spain. And it was back in that sort of modernist cuisine era, molecular gastronomy. And I mean, for a lot of people going to a restaurant, it's an experience. It's not just, you're not just like nourishing yourself. I mean, you are, but it should be, to me, it should be a little bit of an adventure, a little bit of experience. So this was like, I think 12 courses of food that would arrive at your table that looked like something, but it was nothing like what you actually thought it was. So something that looked like netting with little fish on it and crabs, and it was made from rice, flour, paper, something or other, like crazy stuff. So it was 12 courses of just insane, like complete insanity. But I will never forget it. It was up in the mountains somewhere. It was stunningly beautiful, and every course would arrive, and you'd be like, wow, what is that? And it was sort of the excitement of digging in, and it didn't taste like what it looked like. So anyway, it was a good time.
How about best Connecticut meal?
Best Connecticut meal. Okay, that is going to be tricky. Let me think. Who should I not insult? No. That's hard. I mean, I'm a little bit of a sucker for Rosina's down in Greenwich. I don't know if you've been there.
No.
It's pretty fantastic. He used to work with Christian Petroni at Fortina, and he opened up his own spot. It's Italian. It's the quantity of shaved truffle and everything on all your like beautiful pasta and everything else it's just like it's a fun meal, and they're doing beautiful pasta down there. No, you know what? I'm going to have to go with Matteria in Litchfield. If I had to pick the most exciting, and truly one of the most exciting chefs, I don't know if you've been there yet. He just won Best New Restaurant in the Connecticut Restaurant Awards, like the crazies. He's doing unbelievable Northern Italian food, like every ingredient from scratch. It's really a beautiful spot. He does tasting menus. It's a special place. It's more of like it's a fine dining spot, but it's definitely worth checking out.
You mentioned the Italian. Connecticut is filled with
a lot of Italian. We love Italian.
Is it good? Is it good Italian? Is it real Italian?
A lot of it is, I would say 10% is really good.
Okay.
I mean,
That's pretty good.
I like a red sauce joint as much as anyone else does. And let's be real, most Italian is pretty good if you have to, if you had to eat any type of cuisine, you're generally safe eating a piece of delicious pizza or a chicken parm. But like the elevated real Italian, that's sort of like whether it's from Northern Italian or Southern Italian, I would say there are a handful of spots. There are. I would say one in every region, there's probably a really exceptional spot. So Machuria is one of them. Rosina's in Greenwich is one of them. There's some lovely spots in Hartford. But they're around. But again, I think it's, maybe 8 to 10% are actual fantastic spots.
You mentioned your experience in Spain, and I remember sitting with you at, I can't remember the name, it's where the tapas is now. And the poor guy opened,
Carlos Perez
opened
Yes.
2 weeks before the pandemic,
I know.
and then had to
And he
shut
had his
down.
mother, and he is a very talented chef. So his cooking is some of my favorite. I actually just went to a really fun pop-up for Cinco de Mayo that he cooked at. That was just a blast. And he had his mother in there, and who was a baker, and
Yeah,
that was just
and he spent a lot of money.
Yes. Fortunately, he
Fixing the
he
place
had a
up.
backer, so that was
Okay.
better than it could have been. At least it wasn't all his own money. But yes, that was a shame. At the end of the day, I think that things work out. He's ended up in Litchfield. He has 2 great spots up there. He's very happy cooking. But that was a loss for Westport because he's truly an exceptional chef. But it happens, you know?
Other losses for Westport?
What closed? Do you remember, was it Zest? Was it Zest? Was that the name of the place
Yes.
in the corner? And also Da Pietro's. That was a loss. I mean, he's a great, great
In
chef.
a
But it was,
little
that
tiny
little
place,
spot, that was
no
very
parking.
special. 0 parking, very challenging to get in. But that food was
Yeah.
really, really outstanding. So that was a loss for sure. And his place, the other place back in the day, I think it was Zest that he owned with his wife, the one that was in the basement.
Yes.
Pink Sumo is? Yeah.
Yes.
I missed that for breakfast.
Yeah.
There were some very delicious ricotta pancakes. Other losses, I'm trying to think what else. I mean, we liked Manna Toast. But, there's new fun stuff. Another big win for Westport that's about to open very soon is, do you know Pierluigi Fatto a Mano?
Yes.
Yes. The fact that he has his commercial kitchen that's just about to open is very exciting. And he's going to be doing cooking classes and all kinds of fun stuff. So that's a win.
Wow. What else is on the horizon for Westport?
Well, Emmy Squared, that cool pizza burger, I don't know if you know those guys, but they have one of the most iconic burgers ever. They launched in Williamsburg, but now they're in a variety of states. But they do a burger that's double stacked on a pretzel roll that is incredible. It's very Instagram friendly, as well as that sort of Detroit style, super crispy, deep dishy pizza. It's all in squares, needless to say, Emmy Squared.
And that's going to be in Amis?
That's in Amis. That's the Amis spot. Obviously, we're sad Amis closed. I think Jess is great, and she's doing such good stuff at Terrain. Not really sure what exactly happened there, but happy to have Emmy Squared, so that'll be nice. And then Tacombe is coming down the road, not in downtown Westport, but on the post road towards Fairfield. And that's a great Mexican spot from the city. Really fun, super community oriented. They do a ton of work to feed people in the community, which is really nice, and we just like those brands. But the food is delicious, real authentic, good stuff. So I'm psyched for that. And then there's the Israeli restaurant whose name I'm going to mangle, but
The Blondinit.
yes, that, which we're looking forward to in the old Manna spot,
Yeah.
which should be really good.
A lot of Mexican places.
People love Mexican. Also, Mexican travels really well. It's the reason that Bill Taby switched Jessup Hall to Don Memo in the middle of the pandemic. Jessup Hall food didn't travel that well, but Mexican, and he loves Mexican, but Mexican food travels well, so it's easy for takeout. And there's a lot of that these days, right? That's
Yeah.
what pandemic changed that a bit.
What's the most recent place you've eaten here?
In Westport?
Yeah.
Let's see. Where did I eat most recently? Well, I mean, I'm not going to lie. Kawani is like, if I'm not there weekly, I'm there bi-weekly. I really love that restaurant. I think it's outstanding. I think the food it's always interesting. The flavor profiles are super unique. You can't really find that food anywhere else. There's an izakaya place in New Haven, but other than that, it's, for that kind of food, then it really is creative stuff. So we go there a lot. That's probably the last meal I've had in Westport.
Okay. Do you have a favorite cuisine?
I tend to like almost anything Asian. I like all those flavors. I like the fish sauces and the fermented eggs. Like I like all the dirty, funky stuff for sure. I like all that. I also love Mexican cuisine, quite frankly. So, a little Latin American, definitely Asian would be my... American cuisine is lovely and all, but it wouldn't be my first choice.
Sure.
I like the more richly nuanced flavors of some of those, unusual sauces and spices.
So just a couple more.
Yeah.
Chef Andres comes here and invites you to dinner and says, you pick the place.
Oh, good Lord. I think I would have to go back to the place, the aforementioned David DeStazi's Matteria in Litchfield.
Westport.
Oh, and
Comes to Westport.
Darn, okay. I would probably I think I would take him to Kawani. I think he would think that's interesting. Probably nothing, again, like flavors he probably hasn't had before. I think Oko's delicious, but it's unique, but it's not as unique to me as some of the dishes at Kawani, where I feel like they're pushing it a little bit further and doing some really, really creative stuff. So probably there.
And what would you order for him?
Well, there is something called the addictive cabbage that is actually addictive. I don't know, it's like some kind of crack dressing on there with wasabi and something else. That is outrageous. They used to have this shrimp toast that was sort of fried shrimp on Japanese milk bread. They would deep fry the whole thing with a sauce like a sweet and sour kind of sauce they made in-house. I dream about it at night. We would get that for sure. And then the spicy miso ramen is quite excellent there. Probably have to go there. And the broccoli maybe, which is local, always locally sourced, super interesting, shaved thin, raw. You don't usually find that on the menu. So maybe that.
Cool.
Yeah.
This is awesome. We're taping this on before, obviously.
Lunch? We're going to go eat lunch after?
Yeah, where do I go for lunch? I'm hungry. You made me hungry. Where do I go?
Should you go for lunch? Such a hard call. And it's Monday. Monday's a bad food day. Everything's closed on Monday.
Let's pretend it's Tuesday.
Let's pretend it's not Monday. Well, where would I go for lunch? I mean, I love Don Memo. I'm a huge fan, for sure. I might go there. Also, Kasame is now open. We haven't talked about Kasame. They're open for lunch, and I like that chef a lot.
It's a great place, and they really did a nice job with the interior.
It's beautiful in there. One of the prettiest bars around. And the cocktails are excellent also, in case you would like to do some day drinking. So yes, I like that spot a lot. That's lovely for lunch. And what else would be fun? I don't know. I love Oko. I would always sit and have a hand roll at Oko.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. Stephanie Webster, CT Bites, Connecticut's food maven expert. Thanks for all you do for the industry and for bringing the flavors of the Nutmeg State to the 06880 podcast listeners.
Pleasure. So happy to be here.
Thanks.
Enjoy lunch.
I shall.